Good morning, everybody. So it sounds like what we should do is probably give a few minutes for everybody to trickle in to our digital panel. During that time, I would just really like to thank the team at Tribe Dynamics for putting this together and connecting us all, at least virtually, this morning or afternoon, depending on where you're based. So we'll kind of hang tight for a few minutes, and then we'll get started, let's say 3-4 minutes past the hour. Sound good? That gives Allie and I both a little time to finish our coffee. Is that last final gulp?
I have to get my coffee in.
Personality in a cup.
Important.
Exactly.
Well, we definitely have people still streaming in. And you guys, I'm just going to ask for forgiveness in advance if it's at all, as we're adapting to our new normal, doing this digitally. So please forgive us as we work through, how to engage a room through the internet. All right, well, it looks like we have a pretty good sized digital room. So with that, shall we go ahead and get started? All right, so good morning, everyone. My name is Allie Pfister. I'm the principal and founder of Blari Communications. And it is such an honor and a pleasure to host this digital panel this afternoon on behalf of Tribe Dynamics. We have an unbelievable panel of experts this afternoon. And with that, I would love to turn it over to Allie to kick us off and tell us a little bit about your personal and professional journey.
Yeah, hi everyone. So excited to be here. My name is Allie Grant. I am the founder of Be Social. We're an influencer agency based in LA. We have two parts of our business where we actually represent influencers, and then we help brands with their influencer strategy. Love Tribe Dynamics. Connor, the co-founder, is actually my good friend from college, so it's like a full circle moment being here. And I love the application for all of our influencer work. So thanks for putting it on, Tribe team.
Awesome. And Lauren?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Consiglio. First, thanks, Tribe, for inviting me to this panel. I've spent my entire career in the beauty industry. I've worked on all categories, and I've worked with all channels. I spent 10 years at L'Oreal, heading up marketing for brands like Redken, Essie Nail Polish, Garnier Fructis, and I currently head up marketing at Dermalogica, which is the world's #1 professional skincare brand. I've been working with influencers really since the start of social media and have watched the landscape evolve over the course of my career, and I'm excited to be here with you today.
Thank you, Lauren. And Akash.
Hey, thanks again, Tribes, for inviting me. My name's Akash Mehta. So my career started in the corporate industry, in the beauty industry. So I worked for Estee Lauder companies and then recently Dior for 3 years, kind of running up their influencer marketing and social media. And now I work for myself. I have my own agency where I work with similar brands in different industries, from travel to retail to beauty, also focusing on influencer and social media marketing. And I have my own beauty brand called Fable & Mane that's just launched in Sephora. It's an Ayurvedic hair care brand. So yeah, bit of brand, bit of agency. So I'm kind of helping brands with influencers, but also needing help with influencers as well with my own brand. So a bit of both.
Fantastic. And to round us out, as I said, my name is Allie. I was on the early team of the women's online retailer Shopbop as we were acquired by Amazon. About 14 years ago, I started my own consultancy firm with my former employer as our first client, and have scaled the business over the past decade plus to work with some of the best brands and the best team in the business. We consult for brands ranging from Vans to Timberland, Ciate to Josie Maran. So this afternoon, our panel discussion is going to be around the future of influencer marketing, the who, the what, and the how. If everyone could pop their questions in the Q&A, Our format will be to have about a 30-minute panel discussion. Then we'll close off our time together with 10 minutes of the Q&A that we'll pull from the questions that you guys pop into that Q&A section. Sound good? All right, so Akash, I'd love to start off with you. You know, the past 6 months, I think we all unfortunately know that the offline channel has been tremendously impacted. And with that, has your approach to influencers, both with your own brand launching in Sephora and the brands that you consult for, has that changed in this time? And do you feel like that change is going to be really rooted around the time that we're, you know, in this COVID era, or will that be more long-term?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's definitely, I think COVID, the whole situation has really accelerated the shift and the need to go online and especially direct to consumer. So I personally have always been on the fundamental belief that, you know, you have two parts of influencer marketing. One is awareness and one is sales, but you also have the third, which is the most sought after, which is the bit of both. And if you can master both, then you pretty much have got the perfect strategy when it comes to influencer marketing. So for sure, it's definitely accelerated the need to work with the right influencer being the number one factor to grow your e-commerce business specifically as well. So for me, I'm seeing a lot of my companies that I work with in my agency have definitely shifted their budgets towards more of influencer marketing, kind of gearing up to help not only get their brand message more across, because that's when you shine more than ever right now with really connecting to the consumer. He or she really wants to support businesses that do good, and the message is really, you know, spread very clearly through organic storytelling, but also through fundamentally growing their online, which influencers have done, you know, with the swipe up on Instagram just as a basic functionality, being something that we're really seeing the big shift to. So definitely working more with influencers, but more the right ones and in a very kind of online focused way.
Now, Lauren, have you seen the role of influencer change, particularly with Dermalogica? You know, I've noticed as a fan and consumer, you guys have done so much cool content around education. Have you seen that pivot during this time specifically?
It's exciting to hear that you've noticed that, because we have done that. You know, since COVID, we've really seen an increase in the appetite for skincare educational content. And Dermalogica, as the leader in professional industry that trains the professionals, we want to deliver this content to consumers. So we've really ramped up content through masterclasses, Instagram lives, and just overall education being peppered into our content strategy. We've seen the strongest results when we partner with influencers on this. And in fact, our engagement in this type of content has doubled since the start of COVID. So consumers really have more time and they're hungry to go to the next level on their skincare knowledge.
And Lauren, does that focus traditionally then with more of an influencer, or are you guys also, like you said, since you educate the educators, focused on the opinion leaders? Like, what is that mix where you're seeing the highest engagement?
Yeah, we have a mix of influencers. We certainly work with your traditional beauty influencers, but we also bring on board our professional skin therapists who are very influential in the skincare community, those that are performing professional services, and we bring in our Dermalogica educators as well. The other thing that I'd say we've seen an increase for is the desire for more wellness content. At the start of COVID, we actually asked our followers what they'd like to see more of, and unanimously they asked for wellness content. So with that, we expanded the influencers that we work with, and we also included more lifestyle ones that could bring content around meditation, Pilates, gut health talks, just like that. Because for us, skin health is so much more than just product. It's professional services, it's sleep, exercise, diet. So we really brought this whole 360-degree view into our content, partnering with different influencers.
So Ali, as you, you know, you work on both sides of the coin, but as you work with a lot of really great influencers, are you seeing brands across the board engage your influencers in slightly different ways than they historically have?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously at the beginning of everything, we lost tons of contracts in the event space, specifically around Coachella and Stagecoach. So we had a lot of our influencers contracted for work there. All of those fell through, obviously. But we did see brands come to us for new asks, which was exciting. And a lot of that has been centered around content creation. So a lot of these brands can't do their normal like campaign shoots and things like that they were used to doing quarterly or however often. And so they started using influencers in the same way. So putting all of the new collection to them, sending it out, getting them to create their own shoot at home, and delivering those assets. So that's been sort of a way we've been able to pivot and keep our influencers working during this time on top of their normal, performing of posts and things like that.
Oh, that's interesting. And have you seen other brands also asking for them to share more of a lifestyle perspective on their overall wellness point of view, as well as, maybe their more traditional fashion or beauty content?
Yeah, I mean, I think the content that people want to see right now, consumer-wise, is like real, raw content. So we're seeing less of this, like these beautiful photo shoots and staged things. And it's like, show us your lifestyle at home. What is your workout routine, your makeup routine? Like, show us that real side of you. So we're seeing a lot more campaigns like that. And also less of a need to have it be so professionally done in terms of like the quality of the content and the photography and things like that. We're really shooting with iPhones right now, and that's all we can really do.
Okay, yeah, people want to feel a privileged peak. So speaking of new normal and new launches, as we see new iterations of platforms that we know and love. As Instagram launches Reels, or as there's maybe an increased focus on TikTok. Akash, has this changed the way that you approach working with talent and influencer activations? And I use that word in quotes, since it's more of a digital activation than a physical right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely made us, I think with digital, you have to be always on your toes and always be willing to learn and experiment and try new things. So I think the first step of action was always trying to figure out how to leverage all the new platforms, but also let it sit a bit longer so you can understand it, because jumping straight to, for example, Instagram Reels would be quite, difficult for especially, even established big brands like Dior, etc., to understand what's the right way to do it. So I think it's about listening at first and seeing what the influencers are creating and what's actually working for them. And then for us, for me as a brand, even for my hair care brand, I've had a lot of experience working with influencers on Instagram. So that's my bread and butter. Then going onto TikTok, I feel a bit older. I'm not really sure if I understand the type of demographic, but we spent some time listening to it and then actually finding native content creators on those platforms. And it was actually out of luck, I ended up, really listening to those creators and saying, look, I don't really understand TikTok as well. Tell me what works. Let's have a conversation. And from that, my first ever TikTok video that I've actually worked with an influencer from my brand, Fable and Mane, went viral. We got 2 million views, paid very little. But basically that I've never seen that many sales from a TikTok or from any content on any platform directly following that TikTok video. And if I had over briefed it and really did it what I thought I knew from my Instagram, it wouldn't have worked. So I think it's about listening to those content creators is really important today.
I think that's really well said. I applaud my digital team at Bellari. Same type of thing is, if someone's an expert in a space, let them be that expert and let that listen just as much as you give direction, because there's a reason that they have a unique thumbprint on their TikTok or Instagram Reels, whatever it might be. And so to really listen to what their audience responds to and connects with, I think is great, a great tip for everybody listening. And I have a question as well, and it kind of, thinks that we're thinking a little bit about measuring success with these campaigns. When you said you had 2 million views, that's tremendous. And you felt like you could see a movement on sales from that, or a movement of awareness. How did you quantify or measure that to feel like, yeah, that was really worth my time to do?
Yeah, definitely. So, there's definitely tools and systems. I worked with Tribe Dynamics from the beginning, but with Dior, so you have like media value, and you have, typical engagement metrics of likes, comments, shares. So that's definitely one part of the puzzle that, even I use as a small business or within a company. But I think that's one part of the whole puzzle. Definitely, it's also about listening to just general consumer feedback. For us, one metric for me was seeing the amount of emails that refer to the TikTok video. Also, just seeing on average the amount of sales that we got. It's hard to quantify because we had no link. It was very organic. We weren't even tagged in terms of the @ handle. But I can tell you, like, I've never seen every minute that many sales, like every single minute sales are coming in. And it was quite scary. We sold out on Sephora literally within the same few hours just from that video. And the crazy thing is it still lingers today. It still continues. So it's definitely listening to all the even like Instagram DMs I got from that TikTok video saying, I saw you on TikTok. So it's really about making sure that you are kind of listening to all your touch points and not just focusing on one kind of vanity, or, it's more than just a vanity metric of a like or a comment. It's far more deeper than that.
So, Ali, you're, on both sides of the coin, of course, but on the talent management side of the coin, as you're coaching brands through saying, because you work so closely with these influencers, and, I'm sure you have some brands that come in and say, we want to be a total partner and we want to, take the Akash model where we're like hearing what the talent does really well and leverage it. And some brands that are probably a little bit more prescriptive with their approach. If you were going to give the attendees of this panel today, like 2 or 3 tips on what you see working best as you're working managing the influencers, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it needs to be collaborative. Like, I love receiving a brief from a brand and having directive on talking points and things like that. Super helpful, but also like know your audience and know you hired this influencer for a reason. So I think the first step should always be like, let's hop on a call and discuss like what is the creative for this campaign and let's talk through it. I feel like we've had the best conversations when that happens, because I think the brand goes into it thinking this is what I want, but when they hear the influencer speak about, well, this is what does really well with my consumers and my followers, then they can kind of shift their mindset. So love a strategy phone call, and you can work that into your contract. Maybe it's like a 30-minute strategy call that you guys have before you start creating content. And then from that, create your brief, send that over. And then obviously always have built into your contract the ability to have some reshoots or some redos. I think brands oftentimes will just assume that that's part of it. Like, I didn't like that content, now you need to go redo it. But that isn't always the case. So have like 1 or 2 options to, have some reshoots or something along those lines. And again, like picking up the phone and talking through it is probably the best way to go through that, especially when it's video content, something on YouTube or things like that. Like, you obviously want to have your talking points and you want it a bit scripted, but you also want it real and authentic. So it's like really a balance.
Yeah, I think that's nicely said, because you did reference, the importance of feeling like a privileged peek into these influencers' lives. So if it's too scripted, if it's too prescriptive, maybe you're losing a little bit of that essence. It sounds like you're especially advocating for brands to seek during this time. Mm-hmm. Now, Lauren, you guys do so much clever work with the influencers, with the KOLs. And, to Ali's point, so much of it is about a relationship with the management, a relationship with the influencer talent, so that also the brand can feel comfortable to say, hey, I trust you because I know you and we've done some work together, and I trust that Ali's direction is going to be great, or I trust that this influencer's direction is going to be great. How important do you see relationship management in general, and then during the time of stay at home? And how are you guys at Dermalogica tackling that, if it is something that's important to you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Relationship management and relationship building, I think, is the most important part of your influencer network. And it's the way you're going to cultivate meaningful long-term partnerships. For us, we first look for people who will be authentic to our brand. We look for those that are really passionate about skincare, that are happy to share their journey. Skincare is a very intimate thing where people share their transformation, struggles with acne. So we look for those authentic people that are really into skincare. And then we start the relationship, which could start from mailings, conversations. In our normal world, we would be meeting them in person to talk to them about their skin. So, to answer your question, how have we pivoted? Everything digital, of course, right? But that means that they're meeting with our internal influencer team to talk about new products, to talk about their skincare concerns. But we've also been offering them virtual consultations with the Dermalogica experts so that they can see their skin and do an analysis through a virtual system, and we can help diagnose. And again, it's really partnering with them to create this authentic content. What do they want to talk about, and how can we help them solve their skincare concerns, and partnering on that? And then it's just building building off of that relationship, you know, staying in touch, celebrating key milestones with them, and always being available to them, I think is really important. And I think those that you work with more long-term for more content over time are the ones we see the biggest results with. We don't really invest in a flash in the pan, a one paid for placement and walk away. It's just not true to who we are.
Yeah, Lauren, I think that's such a great point. Both on the relationship side, I think we're seeing that at Volare more than ever, where the tenured relationships that our digital team has, you know, it creates such a difference on behalf of the work for the brands, because the influencer talent truly knows that in exciting times and challenging times, like it's a true relationship. It's not just because someone needs something today. And I think that makes all the difference in the world. And then with that, then you can really cultivate that community of brand evangelists who champion Dermalogica or whatever brand it may be. And to your point, something we always coach brands on is the importance of clarity and repetition. The average person has not seen something until they've seen it at least a half dozen times. They need to see it in this really literal, clean way, because while us as marketers are searching and scouring and screen grabbing and so excited to see, you know, our brand highlighted with said influencer, the average person's probably just kind of scrolling through, on TikTok, maybe not even touching their phone. This new content's just popping up in front of them.
Yeah, and I'd add, you know, it really builds trust. Our influencers know we're not going to send them a product that's not right for their skin condition. We know them and we know what they need, so that they trust our recommendation. They trust the products that we're working with them. And this even carries into when we do live events. They trust coming to our events. They're going to have the experience they want. So it's really important.
So Lauren, I think you said that so well. Repetition, consistency, true trust. So Akash, you have this amazing moment with TikTok. And how do you then think about replicating that, duplicating that, taking that as a key learning to build and scale the community for your launching brand?
Yeah, so it's definitely, I mean, something like going viral is not something I can replicate always, but the learnings, and I thought sort of like you can sort of gear up towards it. It's like, how many things can you do to like, hopefully they'll make sure you win. So I think it's about finding those emerging content creators that the algorithm will favor to hopefully, you know, push their content further. But I think it's also about always listening and feedbacking. So once, you know, we went viral, we actually went back to that person and we said, we absolutely love what happened. How can we do it again? How did this happen? So we actually ended up doing a second post about another product, and it didn't do as well, but it got still like her second most viewed video on her channel, so her second most viral video. So I think then we figured out a system of sort of, you know, I think the short-term, short-lived content really works well, but how can you still portray a convincing message that's educational, but informative? Definitely, I love, you know, about Lauren was saying about the wellness content. I mean, that's what my hair care brand is pretty much about, well-being. People love that content. And if initially, let's say, I think, you know, you can always kind of kickstart a viral content, for example, through, you know, an influencer has an initial reach of X, but how do you make that person, those 10,000, 100,000, 1 million people who first see organically from following that person's content, make them want to click share, right? Like the meme effect of, oh, I really got to share this. And I think it's about really making sure you have that education told from the perspective and, you know, authentic from that person. So for us, it's about finding those relevant content creators and kind of leveraging their own unique way of educating their audience.
I think that's really well said. And so, Ali, you know, I'm sure that your team, my team, has gotten a brief that says, hey, I'd like a viral video. Yeah. To Ash's point, it's probably not the brief, right? The brief is I want to have this great video. I want to align on the content, the key messages, leverage the unique point of view of the influencer, think about the algorithm, how to make this really successful. To your note on starting off with a client, a brand client, really aligning on a scope of work, how do you guys, from the influencer point of view, measure on KPIs and the success of a campaign to, you know, engage them in further or to take key learnings?
Yeah, well, we use a handful of platforms for that. So on the influencer side, I'm the representing the influencer. You know, after a campaign, we're delivering metrics. And if this is a brand that we want to continue the relationship with, we put a nice little deck together with, you know, story views and swipe ups and some of the things that's not necessarily shown through different platforms. And then, we'll also look at, like key engagement. So if, there's other influencers commenting on that, or we see other influencers then buying that, we'll kind of screen grab that information and sort of put this comprehensive package together that shows the value of working with this influencer for the brand. And, oftentimes it's, pretty quickly after the campaign goes live, we'll have results from the brand with, what were the sales, how did it do, and if there's interest in moving forward. But kind of, putting this little package together has helped in the past. And then from the brand perspective too, I mean, I think it's always different. I mean, I can count how many like times a brand is like, I just want to go viral with an influencer, like just like, that's always the ask, right? But we really kind of, trying to find like, what do you actually want? Like, do you want sales? Do you want Instagram followers? Do you want email signups? Like, what is it that you really want, and define that. And then that's when we'll put the plan together on, okay, this is how we're going to achieve that.
So
So
be really goal oriented at the set to say, it's hard to be all things to all people, but these are the three things that we're really going for. So that then will shape up what our scope of work should be with said talent. And Lauren Akash, having probably leveraged agencies, managed agencies over the years, for anyone who's listening right now who works for an agency, are there things that you like to see from an agency partner in the way that they work with you on campaigns or brand initiatives? Maybe Lauren, would you start off for us?
Sure. For me, it's really important that you know my brand. Don't come to the table unless you've done your research on the brand. And then we're happy to educate you as we develop that relationship. But it's really important that you have that knowledge, because each brand is so different. And it's really important that you have that heritage and that history. And then we can educate you on what we've done and what's worked and what hasn't. So that would be my first ask. The second ask is bringing something that's unique and different. What's our point of difference? For me in skincare, there are a lot of people creating skincare content out there. So how do you take what is true to our brand and that you've learned and really come up with an idea that's different and we're going to stand out and is not just similar to what content is out there? So I think those two things, understanding the full brand story and coming to the table with something that's different than the category content that's already out there.
Really well said. Nakash, what do you look for in an agency partner?
So I think I agree 100% with what Lauren said. So those factors, and then to add on that, definitely the learnings. I think a lot of the time I've made the mistake when I was at Dior is, I'm thinking very much about presentation to presentation, and then I get that report of the metrics and the sales, and then it's like, what's next? Next product, next launch. So I think, I never really worked necessarily with agencies that really, we had a call after and we actually brainstormed and said, okay, what was really good? What was not so good? Let's say we're never going to work together, at least we can both have learnings. And I think if the agency did that more so, then the agency wouldn't necessarily have the first priority of getting a client to, do the second campaign or the third campaign, but even that learning to then go to a new client and say, by the way, I've done these 7 influencers. I know you want those, but trust me, their metrics don't work. They get 100 link clicks, not good if your goal is e-commerce, for example. So I think, for me, I always have like a master Excel for my own agency that's pretty much got every influencer that I've worked with at Dior, which is most of the beauty ones. So when I work with any new client in the beauty industry, I pretty much know every link on average swipe ups from the big beauty bloggers of 5 million followers to 10,000 followers. So I already have more than just what meets the eye. And those is kind of like my little weapon book, where then I can go to a new client and say, you know what, I know more metrics, and even probably the influencer might even know about themselves. So it's about, I'm a mathematic person, I did engineering. It's about having more data from past learnings that I think an agency can really separate themselves from the thousands of agencies that are now selling influencer marketing to you. Because then that will give you the added value than just price, because anyone could then say, you know what, I want Dior as a client. I'll take, you have, $30,000 for a campaign. I'll do $15,000. Let's do it. But you need that learning to stand out for sure.
Very well said. And before we go over to the Q&A, Ali, for the brands listening, as they're looking to engage an agency, what are 2 or 3 things that you think helps a brand get the best work out of your team?
Yeah, I mean, obviously being clear with like your goals on the onset. I also like, having a wish list of influencers so we can kind of understand who you want to target. and kind of reviewing those and asking why these people, like why do you think they're going to be good for your brand, and kind of, you know, dissecting that a little bit. And then I think on the influencer representation side, working with us as an agency on the brand side, I think realize, like, obviously we represent the influencer, right? And we want what's best for the influencer, but we all have a common goal. We want your brand and this campaign to do well so we can work with you again. So I think it oftentimes they can kind of come in and it's, you know, it needs to be a collaborative effort and like a working relationship. And so I think that's like my, you know, point from earlier is like, let's hop on a call, let's talk through the strategy initially, and then roll this out together. So kind of everyone's input is put in, but yeah.
Nicely said. Well, with our remaining time, we have about 10 minutes for Q&A. We have some great questions in here. Our first question is from Monique, and she asks, if you're launching a new brand, what's a realistic marketing budget to set aside for influencer marketing? So Akash, as you just launched a new brand, quite successfully it sounds, what would you recommend are some things that Monique think about from a budgeting perspective as it relates to influencer?
Definitely. So I would say, probably not the best from an agency perspective, but I would say start with zero, just product budget, and organically, that's what I've done with my brand. We have a marketing budget, but I haven't really started only recently doing the payments and kind of working with agencies. But initially, I really just spent my actual like physical time messaging the influencer, sending organically the product, not asking for necessarily any stories or posts, but just if it came, but organically building that relationship and just asking for feedback on the products. That was the first number one step. That is obviously easier if you have maybe connections yourself or the ability to message them. Of course, if you don't, then perhaps choosing an agency that will be able to facilitate those send outs. And then later, it's about starting your payment. Not my mistake, if I would say mistake, was maybe when I was in companies like Dior, I used to do these campaigns and do these one-off posts, and it was just a matter of like getting these good presentations for product launches, and it wasn't longevity, it wasn't organic. And you know, unfortunately for a startup as a new brand, your budgets aren't going to be enough to sustain a year contract with a big influencer. It's just not feasible, and it won't be worth spending that. So the only option is first organically, slow and steady, and then testing, maybe $200, $300. So I would say for the first 6 months, set aside around $5,000 to $10,000 initially from a payment perspective, and then $10,000 from a kind of gifting, shipping, PR box. More on that side at the beginning. It's pretty much what I've done.
I really agree with you, Akash. Monique, I would say that the first thing is to make sure that you start to identify what the 3 points of differentiation around your brand are, and then to build out a core list of influencers that you think are going to highlight those points of differentiation really clearly and concisely and repetitiously. To Akash's point, you're trying and testing at this point. You don't know the right influencer mix. So from each of those posts, I would be careful not to be too microscopic on, was this one worth my time or that one worth my time, but try to see trends across the different influencers that you built out based upon your core talking points. And from there, you'll start to identify who your core crew is and where you should net invest from a paid perspective to augment and amplify what you're looking for. We have so many good questions, you guys. We have a question from an anonymous user that I'd love to ask Lauren. Lauren, the question is, how do you build and maintain relationships with a community of influencers? You know, I think maybe it sounds like, oh, you maintain a relationship, but tactically, what are some things that your team does to really make sure that those relationships are maintained authentically?
Sure. You know, I spoke to it a little before, but tactically what we would do when we first contact an influencer, we would send them a welcome kit that's general overview on Dermalogica, some of our best sellers, and then some customized product for them, and then start the conversation around, did they get that? Did they try that? And as we engage with them, then bringing them in for a consultation. Pre-COVID, we'd bring them in for a skincare service to make sure that they're getting a treatment either at our corporate office or in one of our flagship locations, and then working with them on what type of content we can help them create around this category. So Are they looking for education on skincare? Are they looking for how to treat acne? Are they looking for stories on pigmentation? So again, partnering with them. And then also tactically, I mentioned before, celebrating milestones. So, it's important to know, when is their birthday? If they're pregnant, did they have their baby? Do they have a dog that they love a lot? And we do. We send presents and little thank you moments at the relevant time. Jackie Aina is one of our big partners, and she just launched a brand herself, and we want to support her with that. So we're out there doing that as well. So I think it's knowing them intimately and being there for special moments is important.
Lauren, I think you said that really well, because sometimes I find that all of us, it's human nature to come in with a perspective that we want to push, but thinking about the other. I think Lauren said something that is so valuable, thinking about the kind of content that influencer wants to create, and how can Dermalogica be a partner to amplify what they're creating. I think it really goes so nicely to what Ali said about the importance of, why did you choose this influencer? And then thinking about that. So, when approaching the influencer, approaching them with their perspective, and then how your brand can be a partner so that you can utilize their feed, their social platform as a conduit to ultimately tell your brand message, but in a way that feels very the other first. It's really nicely said, Lauren. We have a question I think is perfect for Ali. It's from Priya. And Priya asks about the importance of shifting towards micro influencers versus macro influencers, and how this affects a budget. She's curious about how to strike the right balance between the macros and the micros, and what's the right time to utilize each of those types of influencers in a campaign.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of celebrity influencer fatigue, I think, with consumers right now. And so I think utilizing micro influencers is a really good route to go, because it's more authentic, feels more real. And I think there's a different level of trust with the followers on these micro influencers. So I think, initially, if you're a small brand with limited budget for paid campaigns, macro influencers aren't going to be your route anyways. So I would start with an organic influencer seeding program and target micro influencers that make sense for your brand. And we've seen time and time again the power of micro influencers, and the engaged audience that they have is really, really powerful. So we always recommend that, especially for a brand, starting out, that doesn't have budget for paid campaigns with people with millions of followers.
It's really nicely said, Ali. I would also add, it's a marketing mix. So we want to think about the right reasons to engage the different types of talent for the different brand moments. So as Ali said, a micro influencer could be for a really dedicated community. Let's say that you have a beauty brand that focuses on a fermented ingredient, and we want to really tell that specific story. I bet there's a line of micro influencers that are so passionate about that you can identify and really speak to. On the other side of the coin, you might want to utilize a macro influencer for their microphone, for overall impressions and awareness. But I think it's really important to go into it with, what is it that you're looking for? Again, not to go post over post, but to create generalized buckets. So you've got a roadmap. I'm looking for this type of influencer for this moment, this type of influencer for that moment. So then, to Akash's point, you can have a truly reflective conversation with your team after the campaign to say, did this satisfy what we were looking for? And if we don't know the direction we're going from the beginning, it's going to be really hard to have that reflective conversation.
Might just add a quick thing also. I think also, going to your point, it's a lot of people might be questioning, how do I then find those net micro and influencers? And I think the first answer to that would be what I've done with my brand is, spending the time, you clicking on different accounts, seeing who they follow, clicking on similar accounts, and it can be done quite time extensively, but it can be done organically. But then later, it might maybe, instead of investing in your first paid campaign with influencers, is maybe investing in a tool like Tribe, or it's not a plugin, but something like a good tool to help you find those influencers, so you have a good list. Because you might not know, I didn't know the TikTok influencer personally before, but it was an organic email and message that came through just searching TikTok for rising Indian beauty influencers on TikTok. And this is what, if I didn't spend that time going through scrolling, I would never have come across that account. So I think that's a very important thing to say. You can first spend it, spending your time, and then maybe using these tools to help you find them a bit more quicker.
That's really nicely said, Akash. I do think that maybe it might be surprising to people who don't work in this industry how much time it does take to research, identify, establish relationships, and then maintain those relationships with the influencer base that's pertinent to your brand or your agency. And that time, though, spent up front developing that to have a foundation of concrete as you establish your influencer management strategy on behalf of the brand is so critical. We have a great question for Lauren. Lauren, speaking about maintaining influencers, we have a couple questions in the feed here about eventizing. So historically, events have been a great way to have FaceTime with influencers, to engage with them. But in the time of COVID, where we're not doing as many physical events, how are you pivoting in addition to the digital consultations? And how do you think about events in the short and long term as a means for both content and influencer relationship management?
Yeah, I'm really happy to speak about this one because we actually just tried our first in-person event. I believe it was on September 1st. So we've spoken a lot about the ways we've pivoted digitally, but over the summer, we were really feeling that lack of human connection. And as we talked to our influencers, they were missing it as well. They were missing going to those events and really having that experience. So we started to think about how could we do it safely? Dermalogica, since the start of COVID, has been working with an epidemiologist because we needed to work on safety protocol for being able to give professional skin treatments during COVID and post-COVID. So we've been partnering with this epidemiologist and we've learned a lot about it. We really felt that it was time we could do an event safely in a certain way. So what we did on September 1st was we had a drive-in event. So it was Mask and a Movie, and it was actually held at the Dermalogica headquarters in our parking lot that we transformed into a masterclass and a movie. We partnered with a health agency where everyone who was attending the event had to have a COVID test just before the event. So that was done remotely at their home and sent in. Then on the day of the event, we had the health agency there as well. We were screening for temperatures. We had a cleaning sanitization company there as well, making sure that we followed all of the safety protocols. The influencers were able to drive in and they had their own private area for just those who attended with them in their car, and everything that they needed was there. They had a table set up with all the products. We then executed a masterclass. We delivered food for them as well, and then we settled in for a movie. The feedback we had from our influencers on this was amazing. They were absolutely ready for an event like this, and they felt very, very safe with the protocol that we had taken. So for us now, how is this changing how we think? We want to do more of these. It won't be in exactly the same format, but I think we're all adapting to this new world we live in. You know, we're looking at restaurants, concerts, how are they adapting to being outside? I think for us, we're fortunate that we're in Southern California and a lot of our influencer partners are as well. So we do have the luxury of great weather to be able to do more outdoor activities. But I think we're learning, you know, how do you operate and talk about skin with a mask on? How do you do it from 6 feet away where you're usually touching someone? But that was our first foray into a live event. And I was really happy with the success of it. And we're thinking about how do we continue to do these things and expand on them.
Lauren, that is an incredible logistics lift that your team took on. I think
Yes.
it really speaks to the importance of this as part of Dermalogica's strategy, that it was worth all of the due diligence that your team did to put in place to have a safe and then effective event for your community and brand.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay right on time, so we'll finish with one last question for Akash. We have a couple questions around you know, launching brands and screening to find the right influencers. I'm sure that you guys receive a lot of DMs on your brand's page saying, I'd be perfect to share your brand. What are some screens that you look for, and how do you determine, do you respond to everyone? How do you respond? And like, what's your process for inbound requests for a launching brand?
Yeah, so inbound, the two main sources would be by email from our website, like a PR request, or from the DMs from our social accounts. So I have a system where my community manager, she will just collate all the right, you know, never say no on an email or on a DM. We just say we'll review it. So it's kind of like any kind of system where we have like each month like a point where we review everything. In that moment, I collate everything in an Excel. It's never right to say no or a quick judgment. You have to, I think, you know, it's fair to do the kind of a good screening process because you might be missing a gem. And the process basically comes in a mixture of, I use some tools that I have in my agency and my own self to basically vet from the following to fake audiences. There are a lot of tools out there that can help you see if it's a fake audience or not, inactive or bots. Also the relevancy in the market. So if you have someone with 1 million followers, but 60% following in Brazil or Russia, but they're based in UK, there's a big tendency to tell you that this might be, bought followers. So those are the sort of first metric, just to kind of eliminate any of that kind of crowded, kind of following. And then the second metric is the relevancy of the content, the tone of voice of the kind of captions, and the vanity metrics of engagement as well, because that's a very important thing where, if it's only got 2 comments and 50 likes, but 100,000 followers, it probably isn't worth the time necessarily to engage. And those are the kind of first steps. And then later, it's also a matter of just me and my sister, the co-founder as well, just kind of looking at each profile and then deciding. But we have a very fair, rigorous system, not as strong as Lauren's logistical efforts, but it does the job for now.
Well said. And, I think what I learned today is that building a community is not something that happens overnight. It is something that takes a lot of diligence, time, and focus. And it certainly was highlighted by all of our wonderful panelists. So I'd really like to thank Akash, Lauren, and Ali. And this is my Hollywood Squares Vanna White way of going around the Zoom, and Tribe Dynamics for having us. And thank you to all of our attendees. We really appreciate your time this morning. All right.
Thanks, Ali.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.